All right, so Tim writes in, he would like to see a video clarifying the different types of income and the taxes that happen in retirement. So that's actually a pretty good question. So thanks for the email, Tim. So it's actually not that difficult to figure out once you know what to do. So let's look at it. We got, first and foremost, we got OI. Let's use this other pen instead. My new dry erase markers. These things are sweet. Like my cut, by the way, number one way to save money in retirement, get your wife to cut your hair. So we got OI, which is called ordinary income. And that's the worst. All right, so that's the worst. Well, let's write worst here. And the reason for that is because, there's no deductions you can take. If you have a stock that's lost, you can take $3,000 against ordinary income, but that's it. So if you got a W-2 or you get a 1099, there's really nothing you can do. And what ordinary income consists is salary and bond interest. All right, so salary, bond interest, interest from real estate investment trust. All right, so that's what ordinary income consists of, which is why I don't like bonds, because you're paying, you could be paying upwards of 24%, maybe 37% even. So you have salary, and that could be pension distributions, anything that's like 1099, a pension distribution, a distribution from an IRA. I actually need to write that down for sure. Pension, IRA, and then there's probably others I can't remember. Basically, the big ones are this guy here, this guy here, this guy here. Bond interest and CD interest too. That's ordinary income, and so that's whatever your marginal tax rate is, what the income tax you're going to pay. So if you're married filing jointly, after your standard deduction, all right. So remember, your standard deduction is right around 24 to 26,000, depending on how old you are. So you literally, your first 24 to, let's say 25,000 for simplicity, is tax free because you get a standard deduction. After that, you're in the 10% tax bracket. So anything from any kind of income you make from 0 to 19,000 after your standard deduction is taxed at 10%. Anything you make from basically 19 to 78,000 is taxed at 12%. Does that make sense? So that's how the tax brackets work. You got the first 25,000 is roughly a get out of jail free. The next 19 is taxed at 10. The next 77 is taxed at, really won't be 77. It'll be 77 minus 19, whatever that is, $60,000. The next $60,000 is taxed at 12. And anything above that is taxed at 22. So it's a big jump from 77 to 78, because that goes from a marginal tax rate. Anything that you make now, once you breach that $78,000 of taxable income, is no longer taxed at 12, it's taxed at 22. That's a 60% increase. Does that make sense? So, but remember, it's marginal, it's a step. So you got 0, then you got 10, then you got 12, then you got 22, then you got 24, and then whatever it is, 30. I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically, if we could keep it here, we're in a good place. Is this one that's a 60% jump, and we really want to stay down here. And I'll show you another reason why we want to stay down there too, is because what happens now is if you have long-term capital gains and qualified dividends, and basically any stock, American stock, is a qualified dividend. So long-term capital gains and qualified dividends, that's QDI, qualified dividend income, is taxed much more favorably. So if we can stay in this category here, 12, 10, taxed at 0%. All right. Once we break that category and go here, it's taxed at 15%, and I can't remember, it hits 20% at some point. I can't remember if it's 30, I just don't remember. It might be 33% bracket, 35, I just don't recall. But there's a step for long-term capital gains and qualified dividends, 0, 15, and 20. But once you start breaching these higher numbers here, you got to factor in what's called NIIT, net investment income tax. Now, most of us aren't going to have to worry about that, but that doesn't mean you won't have to worry about it, because if you see the rules, this is not subject to inflation adjustment. So just like the alternative minimum tax, which only those evil rich guys paid at one point, until Trump got rid of it in the Trump tax bill, 50% of taxpayers are paying the AMT. Your old buddy Josh had to pay, I think it was in the last year, making good money, it paid like $9,000 to AMT. freaking tick me off, man. That's what NIIT is, a net investment income tax, and that's the Obamacare surtax, essentially a 3.8%. So once you have passive income, and passive is unearned. That means it wasn't laborious. You did not put a shovel in the ground and earn a paycheck. Passive income, capital gains, qualified dividends, rental income. It's not bond interest, is not, because it's already taxed as ordinary income. But passive income, rental property, dividends, capital gains. I'm sure it's just drawing blank. Once you have passive income and you make a certain threshold on your tax bracket, you get to pay another 3.8% on top of the 20% for capital gains. Does that make sense? And that's why long-term capital gains and qualified dividends are wonderful for people in this category. Because like I showed you just the other day. I did it yesterday, as a matter of fact. I did a tax return. I showed you on this guy's tax return. He paid nothing for his $18,000, something like that, of qualified dividend income, and then on top of that, long-term capital gain. Can't remember exactly what the numbers were, but if you can stay here, man, you're not paying you're not paying anything. Now, I want to show you something else, though. A lot of people say, well, how about municipal bond income? That's better because that's tax-free. And I always chuckle at that. I am not a fan of municipal bond income. I'm just not. Now, I know some people have some municipal bonds that are paying 5% tax-free. I mean, I'm not going to say sell them, but you're not getting at it today unless you pay a significant premium. It's just not worth it. So don't do that. But if you already have the bonds, municipal bonds, tax free. And so a lot of people, what they'll have is they'll have their IRA and they'll have their brokerage account. They have munis in here and stocks in here. And they think they're doing it, they think they're doing something right, and they're doing the exact wrong thing, because they're saying I'm not paying any taxes here because the interest on the municipal bonds are tax-free, and I don't have to take anything out until I hit my RMDs, but when I have to hit my RMDs, I pay OI. So ordinary income. I said, well, that's dumb. I mean, I'll tell you why. I mean, it's dumb. People get all upset when I say dumb. It's not dumb like you aren't dumb. It just means you don't know. And I'm not saying you specifically, Tim, so I take back saying it's dumb. Once you see this, you'll say that you shouldn't do that. So I apologize to anyone who says, oh my goodness, he called me dumb. I don't mean it's dumb. If you're doing that, I don't want you to think I'm calling you dumb. I'm not. I'm just saying, once you see how this works in reality, you realize, yeah, it wasn't the best move. All right, so what's happening here is you're making, I don't know, 2.5% tax free. All right, so you're making 2.5% tax free. For simplicity, we'll say 10%, and you're in a 22% tax bracket, we'll just say. All right, so at the end of the day, here you're losing, you're making 10%. 10% minus 22%, your net, 10% minus 22%. Here you're making 7.8 after tax. So we have to look at something called an after-tax yield. After-tax yield. And that will be our after-tax yield too. All right, so you with me so far? Let me write that up here. We got 7.8% IRA after-tax yield, and we got 2.5% muni AF after-tax yield. All right, so it'll make sense here in just a second. So let me show you what you should do instead. And we're saying you're in the 22% tax bracket. So here what you should do instead is you should do stocks and bonds, corporate bonds, or government, I don't care. And we're just going to say these pay, we'll say they pay 3.75. Because if you have a combination of corporate and government bonds, you're probably getting 3.75. And again, we're going back to here. All right, so now we're in the 22% tax bracket, so minus 22%, because we got to pay ordinary income on anything that comes out of an IRA. But we're not paying 22% here. No, we're not. We're paying 15%, if even that, depending on what our actual ultimate tax bracket is. But I mean, a portion of this won't be taxed at all, just like municipal bonds. But once we'll just say the whole thing is taxed at long-term capital gain or qualified dividends, because these are LTCG and qualified dividends. All right, so we're paying 15% here, so you can kind of see where this is going already. So 3.75 minus 22%. We have a after-tax yield, AF after-tax yield here of 2.92. Because 22% of 3.75, our after-tax yield here is 2.92, which beats 2.5 hands down. Here we got 10. We already know it's going to be 8.5. So here our after-tax yield equals 8.5 because the stocks are only paying long-term and qualified dividends on the capital gains whenever we make a sale. So here we're getting 8.5 versus before 7.8. So that's a 0.7%. Better. So that's almost a full percentage point better for the exact same thing, just using a tax bracket. Here we're getting 2.5, so that's almost a half point better, simply just because we're manipulating the tax bracket. Does that make sense? So when in a low return environment, the more you can manipulate the tax bracket, the more is better for you. Now, you're not taking any higher risk. And some people say, well, the corporate bonds are more risky and municipal bonds can be risky too. Just look at Jefferson County, Alabama. My goodness. So just look at, was it Stockton, California? I mean, you still got to go. But if you can make the argument until you're blue in the face, well, there's more risk. Okay. I mean, okay. Which is why you buy a mutual fund or an ETF to spread your risk amongst many different bonds. But anyway, at the end of the day, this will yield us better. There's just no two ways around that. And the reason is because we pay long-term capital gain or qualified dividends as opposed to ordinary income. Now, if we were in a 12% bracket, this whole thing is not taxed. None of it's taxed at all. None whatsoever. And then coming out here, well, let's just do it. So if we're in a 12% bracket, I dropped my cleaning thing. Oy, if we're in a 12% bracket here, again. All right. So now we're in a 12% bracket. We got 3.75 minus 12%. Now, I mean, obviously that's going to be much better. Now, look, I don't know the exact numbers. I just literally pulled them out of the air, guys. I mean, people say, you know, I don't know. They might say the municipals pay more than this right here after tax yield. And then if we got 10% and we're in a 12% bracket, because that is going to come out as ordinary income, which is taxed at our tax bracket, which is 12%. That's our tax bracket. Here, because we're in a tax bracket of 12%, there is no tax on LTCG or qualified dividends. So we're netting the whole thing, 10%. All right, so now we go up here and we're saying, so in this case, I mean, we're significantly higher. Now this would still be 2.5, so we'd have to factor in that 2.5. So we're significantly better than the 2.5 on the municipal bonds. We had 10% minus, we had 22, 10% coming out of IRA, minus 12 would be, what's that, 8.8. So here is 1.2% better. So in that regard, we're getting almost a 2% better returns than we were the other way. Because we're still in a 12% tax bracket. I mean, this isn't taxed at all. That's only taxed at 12%. The municipal bond doesn't change, but this, instead of losing 22%, we're only going to lose 12. So it's 8.8 as opposed to 7.8. 8.8 is still less than 10%, especially in a low interest rate environment, low return potential environment. That's how taxes work. That's why you got to understand asset location. It's huge. I mean, because look at this, man. Think about it. If I can get you an extra 1.2% with no more risk, so what we do is we take our trusty calculator, say 1.2 divided into 8.8. That's a 13.6% higher return than I'm getting in this case, simply by asset location. 13.6. Nothing else has changed. Nothing. No more risk. Just how you move your stocks and your bonds. I mean, literally, that's it. And that's just on the stocks. On the bonds, I'm getting you 0.8 on 2.5. 0.8 divided by 2.5. That's 32% more. That's nuts. 32% more. Oops. I forgot what I said over there. It's 13% more. I mean, it's crazy. So understand the tax code, how it works. Qualified dividends and long-term capital gains are better than ordinary income. Everyone says tax-free via municipals are better than qualified dividends and long-term capital gains or ordinary income. And most of the time they're wrong. I'm just telling you, most of the time they're wrong, because that would probably mean your stocks are in your IRA, and we don't want that. And lastly, I'm going to just show you the last thing here is I'm just yapping. I forgot what I did my cleaning thing. Okay. Oh, right here. All right, so I'm going to show you the last thing. All right. All right, so now this is the big one here too, and this is what's called step up in basis. All right, so we have IRA. Let's say we have, I don't know, 250,000 in stocks, and we have brokerage, 250,000 in stocks. All right, so now we have the same thing, and we have just brokerage. All right, so this grows to 600,000. And this grows to 600,000. And we're just going to assume we die without having taken anything out. Which would your heirs rather inherit? Which one? So we got a brokerage account. No, they're both worth 600,000. They're both worth 600,000. They both have $350,000 of gain. They both have $350,000 of gain. Which would your heirs would rather inherit? They'd rather inherit this one. And the reason for that, because it's tax-free. Tax-free. Because what's called a step up in basis. This one is fully taxed as ordinary income from the first penny. So if the heirs are a radiologist making big bucks, they're going to lose 35% of that right out the gate. Minus 35%. So essentially what you've done is you said, hey, I'd rather my kids inherit some, we'll just say municipal bonds, which don't grow, and then they can inherit my IRA, which does grow, but because the IRS has a lien on that property of, in this case, 35%, they will lose $210,000. So $210,000 is the taxes. That's just the feds, whatever the state is. So in Massachusetts, another $30,000. So essentially, they're going to lose half the thing. Money you probably could have spent. This case, they're not losing anything. Not losing anything at all. They're losing only to the extent of if they don't sell the stock at this point, or the stocks, anything this grows to from 600,000 will be long-term capital gain to them as long as they hold it for a year. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to your greater reward. They're getting $600,000 tax-free, to which they can do whatever they want. Here, they're getting $600,000 tax-deferred, and depending on their tax bracket is how much tax they're going to pay. Not good, man. Not good. And now we can also look at this too. The likelihood of, well, I guess I will do this. I wasn't expecting to go with this big of a diatribe, but this is one of my favorite things to talk about. All right, so now let's look at what municipal bonds do. All right, so you got a municipal bond, $250,000. And municipal bond doesn't grow, it stays at $250,000. Now people say, but I am reinvesting that 2.5% dividend. So okay, that's fine. So 2.5, let's say 250,000 to 200. I'm getting 2.5%, and I'm reinvesting it. And we'll just say, for simplicity, you're getting compounding. You're not, but let's just say you are 250,000. I don't know, 10 years from now, something like that is your present value. 10 years, 2.5%. That guy will be worth 320,000. All right, so now. So now your kid's going to inherit a municipal bond at $320,000, which will grow to $320,000. And so the difference there is also tax-free, but it's not. You can't really call it. It's not capital gain. It's not appreciation. It's just reinvestment. I mean, so it's not. It's literally, this is the basis, essentially, of when you died anyway. So there is no step-up basis in a municipal bond or any kind of bond. There's just not, because it doesn't appreciate. Bonds issue at 250, they mature at 250. There's literally no appreciation. I don't want to get too deep in my diatribe against bonds here, but this is how they work. There's no appreciation. Well, how come the account's worth $320,000? Because I'm essentially saying you're compounding your interest that you're receiving on the municipal bonds. You're not, but I'm just using that to give an example. Even if it were to compound at 2.5%, you're only getting $70,000 of tax-free growth, or the other one you have $350,000 of tax-free growth, if that makes any sense whatsoever. So we don't want municipal bonds. If we have stocks in an IRA, it's just the wrong answer. Get the government off your back. Let the government tax code allow your taxes to grow at a qualified dividends, long-term capital gains, or for step-up basis so you can give it to your heirs. We do not want the government to get your money if they don't have to. This isn't tax avoidance, just saying use the tax code. Nothing inherently wrong with it. I guarantee your buddy Bernie Sanders is doing this as we speak. All right, hope this helps, Tim. I didn't mean to go on this long, but for me, I love this, so I hope you found it helpful. We'll see you.